Hello everybody, this is my chance to respond to the intro ticket about the video that bashed teachers in education. My job here is supposed to be to respond to Tiffany, but unfortunately for me, because I enjoy point counterpoint kind of things, I found everything Tiffany said to be very, very useful, and I didn't actually have something that she said that I wanted to respond to. So I'm going to use this chance to respond to the video, and to do that to try to model how I would approach research and to make a couple points about this class. Before I get into that, I want to say that the engagement level in the first couple of discussion boards has been amazing, maybe even a little overwhelming. Last night I was trying to get to 0 in my unread messages, and I started with 80, and about an hour later I was still at 80 because so many people had posted while I was reading and responding. But still, the brain sharks are great, learning a lot about people in the class. And one of my groups has already finished their Google Hangout. And so I know that's probably a challenge to get everybody together, but it's going to be a valuable tool. So I just want to thank everybody for the high engagement level. And also note that the first few modules in the class are whole class, and because it's a large number of students in this co-taught group, that means the volume has just been a lot. But pretty soon we're going to be breaking off into groups, and most of the work in the class is going to be done in groups. There are 9 or 10 groups, and so that huge volume is going to then narrow down quite a bit. All right, there's just 2 things in the video that I want to respond to. The first one comes in this screen here, and the information here, I'd really like to respond to it because this is an area that I've done some reading about, and I think that the stat here is exaggerated, but I don't want to respond to the stat. It's the first 2 words that get me. And if you're looking for an emotional response for me, it's to these 2 words. Research suggests. Now, something to know about me is I was a debater, and I learned a lot about argumentation in debate. And one of the main things that was impressed upon me is never use appeals to authority, never use, like trying to denigrate the speaker or the source of information, because you always had to look at what the actual information said. So, for example, when you watch a commercial and it's a famous actor selling soap, and the message is, you like this actor, so therefore you like the soap, well, that's a fallacy. And in the same way, it really bugs me when people say something like, the research says, research suggests. Or other ways you'll hear this is, the literature says. Or a kind of an interesting phrase you might listen for is, it turns out that. These are all phrases that people use to try to take the authority of research to convince people of an idea without showing them what the research says. So I don't care about the authority of research, I care about what the research actually says, the actual information, the actual data. And that's a lot of what this class is going to be about, is digging into the research and not just taking the conclusion of research and then using that to, especially the authority of that and maybe even the fear that people have of that as your tool for convincing people. I really react negatively to that. All right, so you can take from what I just said that I start with a healthy skepticism towards research in general, and I want to know the facts and I want to know where they're coming from. But here's the second thing that I want to say, and that is, it also helps to have background knowledge. So it's one thing just to be skeptical, but if you don't have some background knowledge about whatever you're reading about, it's difficult to be skeptical in a way that's useful. And I think that for those of you who are taking this course early in your program, the idea is learn how to read the research, and then when you're learning stuff in your program, you can fit that into an overall scheme of how you look at education. But for those of you at the end, I hope what you can do is take some of what you've learned, some of the major theories, and use those to filter the information that you read when you read research studies. Now, I don't think that it's all that much combined. You know, the big ideas of education, there are not that many of them. And if you have a few big ideas about your field, it's going to help you a lot when you're reading particular points that people are making through their research studies. All right, so here's an example of that. When I see this part of the video that says the education system in the U.S. is failing, and this graph going down, it looks like maybe 50% it's going down, or 100%, I don't know, it looks terrible. I have a little background information that I approach that with that informs my skepticism, and that is, from my perspective, the data that I know shows that the U.S. education system is very steady. That may be the bad news, is that we're steady. When we had hoped, or at least some people had hoped, that when No Child Left Behind started, and of course it was always a pipe dream, when No Child Left Behind started, we would go from whatever low percentage of proficiency were demonstrated at that time to something almost 100% by 2013. Of course, we knew that would never happen. But what did happen was basically nothing. We stayed steady, very steady. And the decline that is shown in this graph and that is implied through the rest of this video is just factually, it's not much of a basis for it. So let me just show you a couple of stats that I think are important to have a grounding when you're approaching information like this. Right now, you might say that standardized testing is not the best way to measure education, and I agree with you that it's very flawed. But it's kind of the approach that most people take, or that is taken by schools. It's dominant now. And so I would look to the best standardized testing that we have, and that is the NAEP test, the National Association of Educational Progress. Been around for a long time, pretty sophisticated in its methodology, and also does not have the flaws that individual state testing has, where some of the states have been incentivized to inflate their scores. So the NAEP is something you can look to. At least it's been done in the same way consistently for some time now. All right, here's the reading results from NAEP. And you can see at the 4th grade level, 1992, the average score was 217. In 2009, and you can't see it on this page, but 2011, 221. Steady as a rock. Unfortunately, we never made the gains, but it's also not true that we're going to heck in a handbasket. All right, let's look at math. In math, there's actually been a little bit of growth, a little bit of positive news. 1990, the scores were 213. 2009, 240. 2011, 241. If you looked at the reading scores for 4th grade, 8th grade, male, female, race, it's all steady. In math, there's all areas that are having a steady increase. Not great, not fantastic. We're not setting the world on fire, and we're still losing out to many other nations that we're compared with, but steady progress. Now, my point here is not about the stats. My point is that there are two things that really help you when reading research. One is healthy skepticism, and two is some prior knowledge, some background knowledge, especially big theories about the information that you're reading about. Those two things, along with knowing what to expect when you're reading research, is going to help you do good evaluation of research and therefore be empowered as an educator.